What's up? Welcome in our first post-game edition of Hoge and Jahns in the 2024 season. Johnsy is still in Canton. We're doing this the morning after the game. And I, of course, am back in Chicago because we had our CHGO pre- and post-game duties. But Johnsy's there in Canton. And how was it?
I think I'm technically in Cleveland.
Oh.
I'm at a courtyard by the airport. So if we're going to be literal and exact, we are journalists here. I'm somewhere in Cleveland, south of Cleveland.
I don't know if there's date lines for podcasts, but we will note that in all caps, Cleveland.
Courtyard, south of Cleveland. The Hall of Fame experience, I'll say one thing, there's a Hall of Fame village now. If I'm just going to compare it to our previous experience, our most recent one, which was 6 years ago for Brian Urlacher's induction. There is...
Good job by our producer, Kent. Putting the accurate graphic on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, courtyard south of Cleveland.
That's where I am. There's a whole Hall of Fame village now. There's a Don Shula's restaurant. There's fields to play on. It's kind of pretty cool. There's kind of a little amusement park. It's different than... They're trying to make it more of a destination than just a Hall of Fame and a football field, a stadium that's not exactly impressive. So if you're thinking about rolling through Ohio sometime, I want to see the Hall of Fame. There's more to do, more to eat than 6 years ago. I don't know when they finished it, but it's a lot better than it was before.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check it out at some point. I still have not been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which I'm going to have to rectify at some point. But not this year, not right now. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. You get all Johnsy's coverage from the Hall of Fame game last night. Go check them out there. And of course, on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns is where you can go to read all of Johnsy's content. And I have some clips up from our post game last night, some things we discussed on CHGO, which you can always remember. You can check out our post game immediately following the game, which for the first time, Johnsy, turned out to be in the middle of the game last night because we made the correct decision to go live as soon as that went into a delay. Kind of had a feeling they weren't going to finish it. And quite frankly, even if they were going to come back out there and play, I think we would have been just fine with our post game starting early. So you got rained on a little bit there, and it turned out to be a shortened game, which maybe we should petition all preseason games to only be 2.5 quarters.
Yeah. It got kind of nasty there for a little bit. A big storm rolled through. It was like post game. There was this window of like no rain. So a bunch of us reporters made we're done. We're out of here. Just trying to get to our cars because there's a whole shuttle process to get in and out of the stadium. But yeah, for a good 30 minutes there, it was coming down pretty heavy. And the lightning, I don't know if you saw it on TV, but there was a period there for 20 minutes where we could all see the lightning flashes, but they kept playing. Those weren't cameras flashing in the stadium. Those are lightning strikes somewhere in the distance. So it was kind of weird to see them maybe play a little bit longer than you thought they should have.
Yeah, they did not show that on the broadcast, but Joe Buck was in the booth being like, so yeah, there's a lot of lightning we can see. I don't know if they're going to stop this thing. So you could kind of tell it was getting a little uneasy there in the building, but technically this was a Bears victory because they took the lead and went up 21-17, and then they stopped the game. I mean, I think if only if they could have done that last year during the regular season, the Bears would have had a much better record.
It's like playing 5.5 innings of baseball. It just counts. It goes officially in.
Avoid the fourth quarter. All right, so a couple things I want to hit on with you since you were there. I was a little bit surprised to see the starters all in pads and dressed and ready to go pregame when we knew most of them weren't even going to play. So, and I know you were kind of keeping a close eye on what was going on. So what did Caleb Williams, what did the starters kind of go through, not only pregame, but also during the game, even though they weren't playing?
So our first glimpse of Caleb Williams, he took the field with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, and they just started throwing routes for a good 10, 15 minutes. And then they had a little bit of fun where they're lining up on the 20-yard line, and they were throwing passes, trying to hit the crossbar. We've seen coaches with the Bears do that before. I want to say it was Rome Odunze hit it like almost immediately. Then everybody missed after that, but they're having fun out there. But then you saw them go through and this kind of surprised me, go through the full pregame routine. You saw Caleb Williams taking snaps from Coleman Shelton, Ryan Bates. You saw him doing the warm-up throws, the warm-up go balls, throwing to DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. They're all going through the normal pregame routine. And this was part of the plan. They wanted Caleb Williams. They wanted some of the newcomers. They wanted the rookies to go through this all together, all the pregame stuff together. They wanted Caleb specifically to get a feel for what it's like, how much time each drill has, how much time he has to himself before the game. So I thought it was unique to see him spend some of that with his teammates. I remember seeing him at South Bend, and he had this elaborate's probably not right to put this, but a very extensive pregame routine where he did things with his teammates, where he did things with himself. So it was interesting to see him go through some of that. I'm sure some of that will change come games at Soldier Field, come the regular season, but that was part of the Bears' plan, to have their starters, their ones, to have Caleb Williams go through that entire pregame routine. Then we learn later that it was even more than that. So the Bears get in Wednesday night. They hear a great speech from Devin Hester, but then they wake up Thursday morning, and Matt Eberflus described it as going through a heavy walkthrough with Caleb Williams and the starters, a heavy walkthrough. So there was a practice Thursday morning for the players who didn't play against the Texans. I love that. It wasn't just a vacation for them. It's the right thing to do. But then it was time to enter game mode. So even before the pregame routine that you see on the field, Caleb Williams went through the script with Shane Waldron. They went over the 15 scripted plays that coaches usually have for games. They went over that game plan. They talked through certain locations on the field, landmarks. Like if we're on this line, we're going to go forward here. Like this distance here, we're going for. They went through different scenarios like that before the game. And then it was also important for Caleb Williams to take part in the halftime adjustment meeting. As Eberflus kind of joked, I think he said halftimes in college are 30 minutes, I think they're 20 minutes, but it is like 8 minutes longer than the NFL halftime. So for him to experience that condensed period of the condensed adjustment period done at halftime, they felt it was important for Williams to go through it too. I said a lot there, but they had a lot on the plate for Caleb Williams and the starters, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, Flus joked. He was joking that it's 30 minutes, and he was saying that you could install a whole new offense in college at halftime.
The wishbone.
Yeah, you can come out with the wishbone in the second half. Obviously, he was just kidding. But yeah, it is an adjustment. You have to do a lot more in a smaller period of time. And I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but regardless of what the results of all this ends up being, like, I do have a lot of appreciation for Matt Eberflus's desire to hone in on the details. And, you can roll your eyes and you can laugh that we watched them literally walk through their pregame routine at the end of practice the other day before they got on their buses to go, to Canton. But, that's a real thing you actually have to do the first time. And then I think that's another reason why they all went through it yesterday. And as he said, it's like, now we don't have to worry about that anymore. Everybody knows how to do it, and they don't have to think about it again, until next year. So it's
Let's
just
be
little
organized.
stuff like that.
Let's have purpose.
Yeah.
Right? We're just not going out there. You don't need coaches out there. Hey, we're doing this now, and everyone's running around looking confused. Let's be organized. Let's have purpose.
Right. And more importantly, I'm glad they got, Caleb Williams can probably get home today or late last night and be like, okay, I didn't play in the game, but I still accomplished something here. I think there is some value, even a preseason game, of seeing things from the sideline, having a headset in his ear, understanding the coach's process. That's another thing Flus brought up. I know post game, Jahns will let you speak on it, but new coaching staff, that's a real thing. How does Shane Waldron communicate to his player? And honestly, I didn't even notice this. Was he on the field last night?
Actually, I didn't notice it either. I didn't see him in the press box.
Okay.
So maybe it was. It's a good question. Shame on me for missing that. But he praised the operation, and maybe Shane Waldron will experiment with where he wants to be. I remember previous coordinators doing that. Like one game will be up in the press box, one game will be on the sideline. But Eberflus did highlight that this operation, you could tell it wasn't new for what Shane Waldron wanted to do. If you hear someone in the background, that's my son, who's now playing on his phone. You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that, but
okay. Well, he's here in the hotel room with me. If you want to like a great father and son trip, everybody, driving to Canton, driving to Cleveland, staying in a courtyard south of Cleveland, isn't that bad of an idea. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is awesome. And then we went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So good trip. He's nodding yes.
So take that, Joakim Noah. Said nobody goes on vacations to Cleveland.
Adam Jahns just did. And it wasn't that bad. Had a great steak Wednesday night. Anyway, where did I leave off? So this wasn't the first time for Shane Waldron to be working with Kerry Joseph and Chad Morton.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an underrated fact that Shane Waldron actually came with assistant coaches who've coached with him before. That never, like, Matt Nagy never had that. Like, Mark Trestman had one guy come with him. Like, these are important things to consider just in terms of continuity, similarities, just coaching styles. So I think it's a benefit to the Bears, and especially to Caleb Williams right now. Eddie was like the operation. And to your point, Caleb Williams got to experience that through what they were calling for Tyson Bagent and Brett Rippen.
Yeah, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it, but I do think that it's, it's better than getting nothing out of it. And now, I also found it interesting how much Flus hyped up how big of a week this is. He said multiple times, like, this is a huge week for us. It's going to be physical. So I guess they're going to come out with some tough padded practices this week. And then I'm assuming we're going to see some starters play in Buffalo next weekend. And, we'll see what they can accomplish this week.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Caleb Williams will be taking the field in Buffalo. You'll see his first preseason snaps against the Bills.
All right, a couple other things I wanted to hit on. It was interesting to me that Torrey Taylor and Velus Jones Jr. did not play.
Torrey Taylor played, man.
That's right. He was the 12th man.
He held the ball and then sprinted off the field.
Yeah. That's an interesting new wrinkle. I like that they let them experiment with that because it's not like the ball was falling off the tee, right? Both teams ended up coming out there with their holder to get like a rep of doing it. So I think that's cool that they let them do that. It's not like it was needed. But yeah, that is a thing. Like, sometimes the ball falls off the tee. How do they handle that? So you're allowed to have a 12th guy on the field, and he has to immediately exit the field. Now, Greg Braggs is convinced that somebody's going to fake pull a hammy and then try to get in the way of the returner.
Yeah, slip.
I fell down.
Like, I'm surprised, Torrey Taylor on that field, he could have slipped.
That was bad, wasn't it? Did anyone talk about that post game? Because watching the game, it was like 3 plays in. I'm like, okay, I understand why the starters aren't playing because this doesn't look safe.
The only time the conditions came up as an issue was, started to downpour. It was torrential for a while, and even Flus is like, yeah, they made the right call, which is good with this classic, which is good to see. No need to continue. The remaining 3 minutes and 31 seconds in the third quarter, then the fourth. So that's the only time it came up in the discussion. Like, there were some slips. I think Tyler Scott had a tough day with that, especially with his returns. Maybe that experiment is over, but yeah, I feel like we've had this discussion before nationally about the Hall of Fame field conditions.
Well, I do think it's a factor that the Bears play the Texans in week 2. It's not unheard of to play a team that you play in the regular season and the preseason. Usually teams try to avoid that. It does happen every few years or so, but I always feel like it's always somebody you play later on in the season.
The Bears and the Browns have had that a couple of times.
Yeah, but that was sort of part of an agreement where they used to play the Browns every year in the preseason, and so then the years where the Browns ended up on the schedule, they would play each other, but it always seemed like that game was in December. The regular season game. I don't remember the Bears playing a team in the preseason that they end up playing also in September, like basically a month from now. That's a little weird. And I do have a hunch that when it came, especially to Torrey Taylor, everyone talks about how it's different catching his punts and that the ball spins different. It's like, why give them an opportunity to basically practice off of that? I have to think that's why Torrey Taylor didn't play, because otherwise he's a rookie. Why would you not get him some reps out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Some gamesmanship definitely going on. Do you think the same applies to Velus Jones Jr. though?
Well, I think it's less obvious with Velus, but think about it. Again, this is just a hunch of mine. I didn't hear this or anything, but it is different tackling Velus Jones compared to Tyler Scott.
100%.
I mean, Velus Jones is more of a freight train, Cordero Patterson type returner, coming downhill at you. And you saw how easily they were able to get to Tyler Scott down once they got to him. I mean, the blocking wasn't great in front of him, but what do you make of that? Because then you listen to the questioning. I don't know if Flus was confused by the questioning post game, but like he was basically like, no, it's a full open competition. And that doesn't necessarily jive with holding Velus out of the game, because if it's a competition, then he should get the reps.
Yeah. Like, so maybe it's a wide open competition, but let's just call Velus Jones the leader right now. Let's work with what Flus has given us. Fine. Call it a wide open competition. We know a bunch of guys have gone back there. But do you really think Rome Odunze and Tyreek Stevenson are seriously in that mix? Maybe Rome Odunze.
Yeah. Well, and they're really only in the mix for punt return, but no.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Before, like Khalil Herbert, I get it. They'll use different guys there, but I think with this situation, I think it's telling that Velus Jones Jr. I don't know why I keep saying his full name. Why Velus wasn't on the field in this game. Like, to me, that's like he's earned something here, or the Bears believe in him enough where he's okay not play. He doesn't need the reps. They don't want to show something to the Texans because they play them in a month, but also because he's done enough good things in camp. That may be a shock to some fans, but he really has. He's actually had some great plays as a receiver too. And he got him as a end around, jet sweep guy too. So he could do a lot for the Bears. So maybe that story, maybe Velus' story is changing a bit in terms of the Bears and what his future can be.
Well, and regardless of what else he's doing as a punt returner or as a wide receiver, the coach and me looking at the return options on kick return, I think he's by far and away their best option. I honestly don't
like Khalil Herbert.
He would be number 2. So I would have those 2 guys back, because you now are going to have 2 returners back with the new rule. Those would be my 2 guys. And then I think there's a gap. I think there's a gap there. I think DeAndre Carter's more of a punt returner, quite frankly, from what I've seen. And I also think that whatever his history is returning kicks, I think that this new rule caters better to bigger, stronger returners than, shorter, smaller, shiftier guys, unless you're very special. Like, I think like a Tariq Cohen could have gotten away with still having success. Obviously Devin Hester too, because that's why he's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's just a different conversation altogether. But I think with what the Bears have, Velus Jones is easily their best option. And I think there's even a gap between him and Khalil Herbert, who I would have as the number 2.
I think, how did Velus put it? It's given his career new life.
He said it added it. He admitted
added value. Added value. Yes. Yeah. So what did you think, Mr. Special Teams Coordinator? I'm sure you broke it down already.
Oh, yeah. I got the stats. I got the numbers. So I did this on CSGO, so I won't get too in depth with it. But so the average starting field position last year, Jahns, was 25.1 yard line. 25.2, I'm sorry. 25.2 yard line. And by passing this new rule, when we were at the owners' meetings back in March, when they announced that they were doing this and they gave us all these numbers, their expectation is that the average starting field position will bump up closer to the 30-yard line this year. Last night, it was the 26.1. So you really didn't get much of a difference last night on what turned out to be 8 kickoffs, 7 returns. There was 1 touchback. Now, the one thing that was different was 7 of the 8 got returned. The return rate in the past was 21%. So we did see more returns, but we didn't see what the NFL really wants. And that's variance. Like, regardless of what the average starting field position ends up being, they just want to see a difference. They want it to look different. Sometimes you get pinned back. They want a huge return here out in the plus territory. They want to see the variance so that it doesn't just look like the same thing over and over again. Well, last night's variance was between the 20 and the 32. It was 12 yards. And that's not what the NFL is looking for with this rule. Now, I think there's a number of reasons for it, why last night that happened. I think you had a ton of backups out there. And I'm not just talking about the returners. I'm talking about the guys blocking for the returners too. Okay. the guys we've seen in practice on the number one KOR team,
they weren't out there.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were, but I think some of the key ones, like a Jack Sanborn, were not out there. Okay, so that's a factor. And I also think you watch the kickoffs, they're mostly all the same. They were like right down the middle. Let's just put this thing in play and see what the other team does with it. You didn't see, I'm going to pin it to this corner. I'm going to try this bouncy kick going in. I mean, there was a little bit of that, but really there wasn't. So I think once we get past the point where special teams coordinators are also trying to right now hide what they might do in the regular season, we'll probably see more of this variance. But for right now, last night it looked like a new formation, same results.
You did see more penalties. There's 2 penalties on kickoffs for essentially moving early, which is going to be closely watched because you cannot move until that ball hits the ground or is caught, which I find interesting. It was like talking to Colin Johnson yesterday, who made the first special teams tackle in the new kickoff rule.
Yep. He
described it as just immensely fast. Just, the distance is right there. And you think 5 yards is a lot, but it's really, with NFL players, it's really not that much, even if, they're moving back, trying to gain themselves a little bit more leverage and cushion. Even like from my vantage point in the press box, I don't know if you can make this out like on TV or what type of view they gave you, but from my vantage point in the press box, like you thought things were opening up, like in Tyler Scott's second opportunity, it looked like they trapped and tried to create a hole. He missed it, but it was how fast those holes close. To your point about having backups in, a lot of blocks weren't maintained. It's different type of blocking. It's in space blocking on special teams, which is, I mean, that's what it is, but it's different. It's condensed, but it's still fast. It's different. It really is different. But from my vantage point, from what I saw, you thought you saw things developing, and then almost immediately, as the returner, Tyler Scott, especially as he closed in on those holes, they were gone, which is NFL football in a lot of ways, just because of the speed and the tenacity of it.
Yeah, and that's why I do think you're going to see, when you do see big returns, I think it's going to come off a missed tackle. Because I've been watching this pretty close in practice, and while they aren't live hitting, you've seen some of that where the returner just sort of squeezes between a hole that's collapsing, which is what you're describing right now, where it looks like there's a seam and it's starting to close. And so I really think it's going to be a timing aspect and also a body type aspect of being able to be big and strong enough to get through that. And so I think, I'm not sure you're going to see a ton of returns that are just, oh my God, there's a wide open hole that just because they're so condensed to start with, that I really think it's going to be more of break the tackle. And then though, on the back end, we're going to see how many guys they leave on kickoff kind of behind as safeties, because it's also got the potential for, once you get past that front line, you're gone. You got the kicker to beat. So that'll be interesting too. And that's why I go back to the body type thing. I really think this is going to be more conducive to bigger, sort of stronger returners like a Velus Jones.
I like Herbert in this situation because I feel like his ability to one cut and get up the field,
sure,
which he does extremely well running the football. And he could get small and slippery and fit through those holes. You saw a little bit of that yesterday. I think, like, if there's a competition to me for that spot, it's between those two players. Speaking of Herbert, what did you think about him coming out with Rippen?
Yeah. Well, the running backs were alternating, but Roschon did get the first carries. So I thought Khalil looked better. And I think Khalil Herbert is a better pure running back. So they have different strengths and weaknesses. Roschon's probably a better pass protector. But Khalil Herbert, to me, is the better runner with the football in his hands. I think he's got a little bit more burst and shiftiness. So, I think they're both are going to be on this team, but that was interesting. And look, maybe it's just based on what they saw in practice this week that they went with Roschon first. But they also drafted Roschon. They did not draft Khalil Herbert.
They drafted Roschon and then continued to praise him as essentially God's gift to football.
And he's got 3 years left on his contract. Khalil Herbert's got 0. after this year. Well, 1, including this year. So it's like, I get it, but I think Herbert's the better running back. We'll continue to see that play out. But I mean, I don't see any need to get rid of either. You're already seeing attrition at the running back position. Travis Homer's been out. Ian Wheeler, the undrafted free agent,
It's
wasn't
probably why you
playing.
saw so much of Johnson and Herbert.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about that. But
I would describe them like the more I think about it, and to the point of everything you kind of just said, just different strengths and weaknesses of the players. They're both your number 2 running back behind DeAndre Swift. It's just based on what situation, which play call, like who comes in first. Or maybe even someone has a hot hand that you see on special teams. Maybe Herbert has a big run, The Bears have played the hot hand before.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we do know is DeAndre Swift is going to play a lot. He's the number 1 running back. He's got paid to be the number 1 running back, and he's looked really good in the preseason so far, in my opinion. All right. Well, if there are 2 stars from this game, Brett Rippen and Colin Johnson looked pretty good. Colin Johnson getting wide open all day. Now, he didn't catch every ball. He did have one really bad drop, and then he had a second one, which was a tough catch that they ended up reviewing, ruling incomplete. But otherwise, we're talking about a guy that was getting open all night, granted, against backups. And I got to say, backups or not, Brett Rippen was putting the ball in some great places. I mean, those were some really, really good throws.
This is why, you could get excited about preseason football a little bit because you just love the stories here, right? It's Colin Johnson, who he was emotional after the game because he was just a couple years removed from a torn Achilles tendon. He hasn't found the end zone, he said, since 2020. A lot of injuries. He mentioned his journey multiple times. He thanked God multiple times. He had tears welling in his eyes at one point. He continued his press conference himself to say more about his own journey, which you have to completely respect. And I think it's a cool preseason story. It's the perfect preseason story in a lot of ways. This is a guy fighting for the 5th or 6th wide receiver spot in this team. He spent most of last season in the practice squad. He did appear in 3 games later. And I think he's got a shot. I really do, because we've seen him play with the ones in camp. I mean, albeit not a lot, but he has gotten some reps with Caleb Williams. But then he's on the verge of being a core special teamer. He wants a role like that. He has embraced a role like that. So just for a preseason storyline, yes, I'm all in for something like this on Colin Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy who was a 5th round pick by the Jaguars. Played a little bit as a rookie. He had a couple decent games, and then for whatever reason, I can't recall the 2021 Jaguars depth chart. But they ended up waiving him. He got picked up by the Giants. Didn't get much of an opportunity. Tore his Achilles, and that's the background that Johns is talking about there. And gotten some games late with the Bears last season, and I think they like him. I mean, they've added some wide receivers here. That's going to make it a little bit tougher for him to really realistically play in a game this year. But back end wide receiver, practice squad, somebody who, if he can continue to prove himself on special teams, it's not nothing that he made that tackle on the opening kickoff. It was a nice play.
Yeah, I think a guy with his size, length, and athletic ability could be perfect for the new kickoff role.
Yeah,
he's a big player, athletic too. Yes, he's not a superstar receiver, but on special teams, he can make big tackles. And you saw that in the first play of the game.
What did you make of Brett Rippen's nice night?
I thought one of the most interesting things that he said last night is that he doesn't think he's in a competition with Tyson Bagent. I think he knows where he stands. And, I had a long conversation with him about a week ago about how he's embracing, the veteran role, even though he's only 6 years into the league. He's played with Matthew Stafford. In one season, he played with Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers. He was a teammate of all 3 of those guys. He's got experience in the Shanahan-McVay system that's all over the NFL now. He's supposed to be like an awesome communicator, like teammate. And he's here to help Caleb Williams like get through this developmental process, help him with the operation, as he said. And he's embracing it at this stage in his career. Now, he was very happy about how he played. How could you not be? He was outstanding because, as he put it, he had a bad taste in his mouth from last season. His last start was in Green Bay for the Rams, and they were awful. I think they lost 20-3. He had a bad completion percentage, just a bad game for him. So to have a performance like he did on national television, I think he should feel good about himself. But in terms of his role with the Bears, like, they want to keep him. They want to keep him. Maybe someone has a backup issue around the league, but now I'm thinking if I'm the Bears, I might have to keep him on my first 53, even if I want to put him on the practice squad.
Yeah, that is interesting because, I mean, the practice squad rules make it really easy. There's also, by the way, the new rule is that you can have the practice squad quarterback active an unlimited times now. I don't think people even realize that rule got changed this year.
Yeah.
That whole emergency quarterback thing.
Brett Rippen would be perfect for that role.
Yeah. So there's way more flexibility even with that, should he even need to play while on the practice squad. So, in fact, I was looking at that last night. I should have had that ready to go. Regardless, see if I can still find that. Yeah. Oh, here it is. This is from March 26. Third quarterback can now be elevated from the practice squad an unlimited amount of times during the season. That allows more flexibility to have the third QB inactive on game day, but eligible to play as the emergency quarterback if the other two get hurt. So, yes, that would be perfect. However, when you're on the practice squad, you can get signed to other teams. That's actually what happened last year when the Jets signed Brett Rippen off the Seahawks practice squad. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bears handle that.
So many teams put immense value on having good teammates in the quarterback room, right? And I know maybe I'm harnessing some bad memories because it's what the Bears tried to do for the previous regimes, right? But Brett Rippen, he's just got such a great reputation around the league. I think that's why you see his career continue. So the Bears want to keep him. Maybe turn heads. Maybe there's some extra phone calls about to be made about him, down the road. Maybe some scouts are talking more about him. Outstanding game last night on national television. But the Bears see immense value of having him on their roster, especially when it comes to helping Caleb Williams and even Tyson Bagent.
I think he's looked good in practice too. I wasn't necessarily surprised by what I saw last night because of how he's looked in practice. But this is August. All right. Any other final thoughts?
No. Good to see Mongo and Devin Hester get in Julius Peppers too. Cool to walk through the Hall of Fame and see in the room with all the busts, right? They're what would you call that? Their placard. They're ready to go. It's cool. It's going to be a fun weekend here in Canton. Sure, a lot of Bears fans. It's good to see Devin Hester, someone we saw as kids play. A special weekend for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julius Peppers in there, too, was one of the best to ever do it and spent some time with the Bears as well, even though he's,
and he
considered
was so
more
good.
of a Panther.
That first year, though, he had with the Bears, his first couple of years, the defense was special, man.
Oh, one of the best signings in, he was up there with Marion Hossa and John Lester in kind of that same time period of Chicago hit some really good free agent signings. And there was no question Julius Peppers was one of those good ones. And then my favorite part about that, though, was my favorite trivia question is, do you remember the two other players that were up there at the podium when they introduced him? Instead of him having his own press conference, they did three guys together. And the other two players were...
One was a tight end.
Brandon Manu Maneula. I'm not saying that right.
You got close, but that was definitely one of them.
Brandon Manu Maleuna. That was better. The other one was
I
a
can't-
running back.
Marion
Played for the
Barber?
Vikings. It's not Marion Barber.
Chester Taylor?
Chester Taylor.
Wow.
I don't know why that image is just burned into my head, but it is.
Huh.
Unless I'm
facts.
misremembering it, but I'm pretty
Fun
sure.
facts with Hoge and Jahns.
Yeah, there you go. Those are the weird memories that, you know, you just randomly remember.
What was that press conference that we had? It was Mike Glennon, Deion Sims, Marcus Wheaton. I'm missing somebody.
Oh, yeah. I feel like it was a safety. Marcus Wheaton.
Brian Mundy? No.
I feel like that one might have been separate.
Good job by Equinemius St. John. He's going to get the block.
No, it wasn't Equinemius St. John either. I don't know. All right. Well, we will have you covered this week. It's a big week. Not just for the reasons that Flu said, but there's hard knocks, there's practices, there's a game in which I think Caleb Williams will actually take the field. So it is a big week for the Bears, and we will have you covered here on Hoge and Jahns as always. Go to hogeandjohns.com. You can check out our merch, including shirts like this one I am wearing. If you can't see this shirt that I'm wearing, well, maybe go check out the YouTube channel at some point. You know, even if you don't consume the pod there, it's we greatly appreciate if you jump onto YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the like button, help us grow the channel, help support the podcast. Vice versa too. If you watch on YouTube, please check us out the podcast version wherever you listen to podcasts, and hit subscribe there as well, and help us continue to grow the podcast feed. We greatly appreciate the support as always. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns, and at Hoge and Jahns. At Hoge and Jahns is our Twitter account as well, so you can check us out there. We'll be back in a few days after the weekend festivities and more practices going on in Lake Forest while the Hall of Fame stuff's going on in Canton. So we'll have all that covered for you as well. John, safe trip home.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you guys soon.
See ya.